He's not alone in there, is he? 3 in a blouse is one too many.
Everyone thinks they know Open All Hours. Arkwright, Granville, the till, the bicycle, and that long-suffering nephew dreaming of a better life. But the real story of that little corner shop is stranger, darker, and far more fascinating than anything that ever made it onto screen. Today, we are going back behind the counter with 10 secrets the first video never touched. Fact 1. Roy Clark nearly quit the show before it became famous.
Full-bodied, indefinable, deep with two lumps.
Roy Clark wrote every single episode of Open All Hours. But after the first series, he came close to walking away entirely. The BBC had given the show lukewarm support, and Clark felt his scripts were being undervalued. He was already writing Last of the Summer Wines simultaneously, and the workload was becoming immense. Clark told colleagues privately that he wasn't sure Arkwright had enough range to sustain a long-running series. He worried the shopkeeper format was too narrow, too repetitive, too small. What changed his mind was a letter. Not from the BBC, but from a retired shopkeeper in Leeds who said the show was the most accurate portrait of his working life he had ever seen on television. Clark kept that letter on his desk for years. He later said it was the single thing that convinced him to write a second series. Had he walked away, the show would have ended after just 7 episodes. Britain would never have got Arkwright at his peak.
All this money? What money? One little brush and a pot of whitewash.
And David Jason might never have become the household name he is today.
Special.
Oh, that special pair.
Fact 2. Gladstone the horse caused chaos on the Doncaster streets.
What are you up to? And just exactly what are these marital aids?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask.
The horse that pulls Granville's delivery cart wasn't a trained TV animal. He was borrowed from a local farmer for the location shoot. The production team called him Gladstone. He was old, stubborn, and entirely indifferent to cameras, directors, schedules, or the feelings of the crew. During one location shoot, Gladstone refused to move for 40 minutes while the crew stood in the rain. David Jason reportedly spent the time calmly, reading a newspaper in the cart, waiting him out. In another incident, Gladstone bolted unexpectedly down a residential street. The camera crew chased him for 2 full blocks. The footage was completely unusable, but the story became legendary on set. The production team briefly considered replacing him with a more cooperative animal. Ronnie Barker vetoed it immediately. He said Gladstone's stubbornness was perfectly in keeping with Arkwright's world. Gladstone appeared in the show for 3 series. By the end, he had outlasted 2 cameramen, a director, and the patience of everyone except Barker.
Shut, yes.
What's he doing shut?
Don't talk to him. He doesn't even work here.
Fact 3. Lynda Baron almost didn't play Nurse Gladstone.
What are you doing up here?
You're just passing.
Nurse Gladstone, Arkwright's long-suffering romantic target, was originally written as a much younger character. The BBC's initial casting brief described her as being in her late 20s. Ronnie Barker pushed back immediately. He argued that the dynamic between an aging, miserly shopkeeper and a young nurse would feel uncomfortable rather than funny. He specifically requested Lynda Baron after seeing her work on stage. The BBC was hesitant. She wasn't a well-known television name at the time, and they wanted someone with a higher profile. Barker insisted, as he often did when he felt strongly about something. He said the comedy only worked if Nurse Gladstone could give as good as she got. Baron's warmth and impeccable timing transformed the role into something genuinely moving.
It is on the list of little adjustments I have to make, my love. It is second in order of priority.
What's first?
Woo.
The push and pull between her and Arkwright became the quiet, emotional heart of the entire show. Without Barker's intervention, Open All Hours might have had a very different and significantly weaker romantic centre.
Don't worry. It's a man whose dog often takes him for a walk.
Fact 4. The show was almost set in a completely different location.
Milk tray, my love.
Pin tray to you.
Roy Clark's original draft set Arkwright's shop in a northern market town, but not Doncaster. His first instinct was Rotherham, a town he knew well from his own childhood. The location scout visited both towns and came back with a clear recommendation for Doncaster. The specific street, Lister Avenue, had an authenticity and a texture that Rotherham's alternatives simply lacked. The shop itself, Lister's Stores, had been trading continuously since the 1930s. The owners were initially reluctant to allow filming. They feared the publicity would bring too many strangers disrupting the neighbourhood. The BBC negotiated for 3 months before finally getting permission. They agreed to film only at weekends and to compensate the shop for any lost trade during production. Ironically, the publicity brought the shop more customers than it had ever had before. It became a destination in its own right, drawing visitors from across the country. That hesitant location agreement gave the show one of the most recognisable exterior settings in British television history.
I've been assaulted 3 times seriously in the last few years.
There you are, you see.
And every time it was you.
Fact 5. Ronnie Barker researched the role by working in a real shop.
Come in, don't be hesitant. Everything's for sale.
Oh, no, I don't want anything. I was just passing, and I've noticed you spelt your sign incorrectly.
Before filming began, Ronnie Barker spent 2 weeks working behind the counter of a small grocer's shop in Oxfordshire. He did not tell the owner he was an actor. He introduced himself as a retired teacher doing voluntary work in the community. He stacked shelves, served customers, and studied how a real shopkeeper moved, spoke, and thought about money. Barker later said the experience gave him Arkwright's walk, a sort of proprietorial shuffle, always staying close to the counter, always alert to the till and the door simultaneously. He noticed that real shopkeepers rarely made eye contact while serving. They were always scanning, checking stock levels, watching for shoplifters, calculating. That constant vigilance became one of Arkwright's most defining physical traits. The shop owner eventually recognised him from television. Barker admitted everything.
And then explain to this gentleman our policy on little bags, will you?
Certainly. He won't let me go out with any.
Apologised sincerely and apparently spent an entire afternoon signing autographs for the regulars. That 2-week undercover operation shaped one of British comedy's most precisely observed and believable characters.
The minute he were upright, the next minute his legs were all over the place.
I know. His mother was very similar.
Fact 6. The BBC censored one episode entirely, and Barker never forgave them.
But I mean, he's so small, he can't be all that repulsive, can he? Although he does try, doesn't he? Are you going to buy that tin, or are you going to bring it up to body temperature?
In the 3rd series, Roy Clark wrote an episode that dealt directly with the declining state of British high streets. Arkwright watches neighbouring shops close one by one and begins to face the real possibility that his own shop might not survive. The BBC's head of comedy at the time felt the episode was too bleak for a family sitcom. He asked Clark to rewrite it with a lighter, more reassuring resolution. Clark flatly refused. The episode was pulled from the schedule entirely and replaced with a repeat. It was never broadcast in its original form and has never been publicly screened since. Barker was furious when he found out. He felt the BBC had fundamentally misunderstood what made the show work. It was never just light entertainment. It was about the stubborn, dignified survival of a certain kind of Britishness. Clark rewrote a softened version under protest. The original script remains unreleased and has never been confirmed to exist in the BBC archive. It remains the lost episode of Open All Hours, a darker, more truthful version of Arkwright's world that audiences were never permitted to see.
Yes, it's a tempting offer. You must have a tidy little something tucked away, I bet.
Oh, I have, and it's all yours.
Fact 7. David Jason turned down a film role to stay with the show.
Do you think I'm attractive to women?
Well, only if they're looking for someone to work at 20,000 fathoms.
During the second series of Open All Hours, David Jason received an offer to appear in a British film production. The role was significant, a lead part that several better-known actors had already turned down. The film shoot would have conflicted directly with the Open All Hours recording schedule. Accepting it would have meant leaving the series mid-production. Jason turned the film down without hesitation. He later said he felt a loyalty to Ronnie Barker that made any other choice simply unthinkable. The film went ahead with another actor and performed modestly at the box office. It is largely forgotten today. Jason's decision kept the Granville character intact at the exact moment audiences were beginning to fall in love with him. The third series, which followed directly, became the show's most popular and celebrated run. It is one of those rare moments in television history where professional loyalty and sharp instinct pointed in precisely the same direction.
Coming in here on a regular basis, they're already alert to the perils of being robbed.
Fact 8. The show's theme music was nearly rejected by the BBC. The instantly recognisable theme tune for Open All Hours was composed by Max Harris. But when he first submitted it to the BBC, it came very close to being sent back. A senior BBC executive felt the tune was too jaunty, too light and carefree for what he described as a character-driven comedy drama about loneliness and unfulfilled ambition. Roy Clark and Ronnie Barker both listened carefully to the alternative themes that were subsequently proposed. They rejected every single one and insisted on returning to Harris's original composition. Barker argued that the jaunty quality was exactly right. Arkwright's tragedy, he said, was that he did not know he was tragic. He genuinely believed he was winning. The music had to reflect his self-image, not his reality. The BBC backed down, as they so often did when Barker felt strongly about something. Harris's theme stayed exactly as written. Today, it is one of the most instantly recognisable pieces of television music in British broadcasting history. You hear it once, and you are immediately back inside that shop. Fact 9. Ronnie Barker's final scene in the show was unscripted.
With or without scruples?
Right!
When Open All Hours ended its original run in 1985, Barker decided he wanted to mark the occasion differently from a standard series finale. He did not tell the director or the crew what he was planning. In the last scene of the last episode, after the cameras were supposed to have stopped rolling, Barker walked back onto the empty shop set alone. He stood behind the counter for a long moment, ran his hand slowly along the till, and looked quietly around the room. A cameraman, who had not been told to stop, kept filming out of instinct. The footage captured Barker saying a private goodbye to Arkwright, not as a performance but entirely as himself. That footage was never broadcast publicly, but it was watched privately by the cast and crew, and several people present that day have described it as one of the most quietly moving things they ever witnessed during their careers in television. Barker retired from acting not long afterwards. He said simply that he felt he had said everything he needed to say. That unscripted moment in an empty shop was, for many who saw it, the true and final ending of Open All Hours.
No, it's all very real as far as I can ascertain.
I'll never be able to look Nurse Gladys in the face again.
Well, not from this angle, certainly.
Fact 10. The show changed how British sitcoms handled class, quietly without anyone noticing.
Put it on.
Oh. Listen, have you guys got somewhere warm I can put
Open All Hours was never marketed as a show about class. It was sold to audiences as a gentle, warm comedy about a shopkeeper and his daydreaming nephew. But Roy Clark embedded something considerably more subversive into every episode he wrote. Arkwright is working class and proud of it, but he is also trapped by it. His miserliness is not simply greed, it is the deep survival instinct of a man who has never once felt financially secure and suspects he never will. Granville, meanwhile, dreams constantly of escape. He reads books, he talks about ambition and wider horizons, and every single episode he goes nowhere at all. The bicycle circles the block and returns to the same shop, the same counter, the same life. Clark was writing about a very specific kind of northern working class existence. Not glamorized, not condescended to, not mocked, just observed clearly and honestly. At a time when British sitcoms either sentimentalised the working class or laughed at them, Open All Hours quietly did neither. Critics at the time barely noticed what he was doing. Audiences simply thought it was warm and funny and real. But the reason it felt so real was precisely because Clark never once sentimentalised the trap his characters were living inside. That quiet, unshowy honesty is why the show holds up today when so many of its contemporaries have dated badly. Arkwright's world was never meant to be escaped. It was meant to be understood. Open All Hours was never just a sitcom about a corner shop. It was a portrait of a certain kind of Britain. Stubborn, funny, quietly heartbreaking, and utterly convinced it was doing fine. And now you know the story behind the story. There is always more going on beneath the surface of the shows we love than we realise. If you enjoyed this one, you know what to do. Hit subscribe, leave a comment below, and I will see you in the next one.